And welcome to Conservatives Talk. In America, get ready to go ahead and get out your wallets because our fighting principles are being duked out in Congress right now.
And Governor Christie supports kids chopping it off, so it's time to bring back the Don't Chop It Off movement.
And welcome back to Conservative Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we'd like to take a quick moment to remind all of Jamie's subjects that they are required under Jamie's law to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content that we produce and release out on any of the platforms we're on, as well as making sure that you do understand your obligations to also hit subscribe to those platforms, because as the #1 show producer of Jamie Law content, you have to know where to go and where to get your information from. You are also required to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and contribute your monthly tithe to Jamie, just because we all know if you don't, Jamie becomes shoeless. I'm going to leave that one alone just right there. So with that in mind, Jamie, would you please care to give us your first reminder?
Boycott hometown headlines. It's almost done. And you know what? I heard something very important at a commission meeting, but I think everyone's catching on to the movement. It's time to get liberal media out of here because it starts with you boycotting hometown headlines. Everybody's picking it up. We all can do it, but we have to do it together. And it starts with you boycotting hometown headlines.
Oh, I've got it on video.
Thank you to the commissioners who said it and support our movement.
So with that in mind, we also like to take a quick moment to say thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So make sure you are going to Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net and checking out all of the local grassroots content producers on their platform. If you're really looking for a great firsthand perspective of any sort of firsthand news or firsthand knowledge, or just people who know what's going on in the areas, you will not find a better source of information than Net News Network. We also want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. So Veterans for America First is the premier America First policy initiative and movement in the entire country. So really getting behind them is really putting America first.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah,
the movement says it all.
Yeah.
And they really push a lot of their movement through their media arm, and that being Vet Voice. So make sure you are looking for any content on every major social media platform from Vet Voice. Let's go ahead and jump right into the meat of this thing, and bring in the first topic of this, and that is our fighting priorities are literally being fought over in D.C. right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's so you've heard the acronym, the NDAA, and that's basically what we're going to be referring to.
Mm-hmm. So what he's talking about there is the policy platform known as the National Defense Authorization Act. It is the policy standpoints that Congress votes on and then will later come back through the appropriations measure to decide how much funding is going to go into each of these. But the NDAA has to be passed first in order to lay out for the appropriations committee to determine what they will fund and how much money they'll give to each one.
It's basically like it's like a sub budget for the military inside of the overall appropriations, because the House sets the budget, and that's what we refer to when we talk about the appropriations, and then the overall budget and how we do governmental spending. And this is just the omnibus is how government agencies spend. The NDAA is how the military and our National Defense Fund spend.
Yes. So with this this massive bill that is coming out, let's look at how much this is going to cost, because opening up the show, talking about taxpayers having to take out their wallets for this. So
yeah,
the NDAA is estimated costing the American public $886 billion for the 2024 fiscal year
alone.
Yes.
alone. This isn't spread out over a couple like example, right? When they kicked the debt ceiling, they kicked it for 2 years, right? That's not what this does. This is just for September to October of next year, because they run their fiscal year from September to October. From September to October of next year, that's all this is.
Yes. And it's notable to mention this is actually
September, whatever.
It's actually a 3% increase from the 2023 NDAA as well.
Yep.
Because that was what was negotiated in the overall package that was just handed down, or the debt ceiling package that was handed down. I'll be honest with you, I would have been 100% fine with keeping it at the 2023 level, not trying to get that 3% increase, and cutting all the programs that are currently that are going on in the Department of Defense right now that we're going to get into. A lot of these amendments that have been offered up to change the NDAA as it came out of the National Arms Committee, and just instead of funding a lot of them, just stripping all the funding and then reallocating the money towards all those groups, and us not have to have a 3% increase in this area.
So,
that's my thoughts on
it. And I agree to a certain extent, right? Because I have no problem with the 3% increase so long. Like, even if we kept everything else at a 1% increase, like we were talking about with, the debt ceiling and everything else for the other agencies, I have no problem with defense going up 3% so long as it's actually valid. You see what I'm saying? The problem is, and to your point, and was what I agree with you on, there are things that are now being put forward in this that aren't, in my opinion, valid. They're not in the interests of the American people or our defense.
Yeah. So what we're kind of referring to in this regard are the over 1,500 amendments that were filed within 2 weeks or so. Yeah, roughly about 2 weeks after the NDAA was passed out of committee and before it was taken up as it was being considered in the Rules Committee. So of those 1,500, it whittled down to about 800 they were going to look at. And of that 800, you're looking at somewhere around about 300 that were actually voted on the floor.
And basically what this is like the committee passed it, but then once the entire House was able to look at the bill and see what it came out of committee, they were like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Why would we do this? And so they submitted an amendment to try to change what came out of committee.
Yes.
And then, like Justin was saying, then that's dwindled down to the things that actually everyone could get on the same page about to a certain amount.
Yes, because some of the amendments were, in all honesty, probably redundant
and selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were like, well, my base needs to be bigger because I'm probably going to retire by the time it's constructed. Like,
I want it named after me.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like things like that, things that aren't necessarily for defense. They're just amendments to try to bolster a district, one versus the other.
Yes. Although the Democrats are coming out and saying that all of these amendments that have been, majority of these amendments that were being offered are nothing more than kind of conservative or ultra right wing wish list propaganda, conspiracy, QAnon. Look, you can come up with all the other adjectives they use to describe anything that's actually not left, that is not just ludicrous in regard to the liberalism that they throw out there.
Because some of this has nothing to do with defense. That's why we
no. So one of the amendments that was proposed for this was a ban on Defense Department funding for drag queen shows.
Which is, again, this is not propaganda. No. This is something that has nothing to do with defense. Why would it be in there? Well, no one's saying if you want. I mean,
look at what the Navy is doing. Using one of their service members as a drag queen figurehead in efforts to help recruiting into that demographic. Yes,
I'm trying not to get banned.
Yes, that's what they did. They used a drag queen, put it out on TikTok, and what we we're going to use the pronouns it, just so we don't get kicked off of any of the platforms. Because if you quote unquote misgender something, then you can get kicked off the platform. So we'll use it for this. So you're using this this it and trying to recruit others like them and others with like minds to them into the military, into the Navy. Yeah, that happened.
Look, if you know me, you know my jokes. So I'm caught in between making horrific jokes at the moment. Okay, and being, blunt, which I shouldn't be either in this regard. Jamie, if I don't want to get
what's long, dark, and full of semen?
A Navy ship.
A submarine, Jamie. A submarine. Okay.
Look, that reminds me of, anyway, I'm not gonna tell that joke.
Probably good. So another thing that there that was implemented, or one of the other amendments that was voted on, is the elimination of the Pentagon's chief diversity officer. And they also included in that the prohibition of teaching the critical race junk in military academies, which apparently pissed off a lot of Democrats that was added into the amendment, not to teach critical race theory inside the military academies.
But you're supposed to be taught as one.
Well, I thought critical race theory wasn't taught anywhere. So why aren't you getting mad that you're banning it from being taught?
Valid. That's valid. You know what I mean? But I mean, like, when...
Yeah, you're right. When any involvement within the military, you're always teaching unit cohesion. You're always talking about moving as one, moving together as a unit, moving together as a squad. One goal, one mission. But the notion of critical race theory and even the diversity junk is all about, it's not bringing folks together, it's tearing them apart.
It's showing them the without,
it's about individuality.
It's about individuality, yes. Right? When the most diverse group of friends that I know all have military backgrounds, because they have been trained and, in a sense, reprogrammed not to see color, only see actions, and judge someone by their character and their actions. Whereas in anyone or anything that I've ever seen that believes in this critical race theory junk and all that crap, right, has only been taught to idolize the individual
themselves.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. Like what I as an individual is more important than what you as an individual are, because it's how I perceive things, not how you perceive things, which is the most dividing way of looking at and having a perspective on the world, because then all you start thinking about is I instead of we as a team or as a country.
There is no more truth, only relativism.
Yeah.
That's what this critical race theory teaches. So another one, which in all honesty sounds kind of iffy, but when you think about it, it's actually something that you really want in a Defense Authorization Act, and that is the limit, or they limited the Biden's green energy agenda when it comes to being implemented within the United States military.
Again, I don't understand how, and this is why I'm okay with the increase in 3%, right? Is because as fast as technology advances, okay, we as the United States, in order to continue to defend ourselves, need to be on the cutting edge of technology. So there's no reason why, like a lot of our advancements in society and technology
come through the military,
through the military, and then it's passed down after the patent inside the U.S. government has worn off, okay, or faded out. In order to continue to have that advancement and to have that level of security that we all have grown accustomed to, we have to be able to spend the money as necessary, almost free willingly, to continue that innovation. That defense is the one area where I 100% agree that it should be 51% of the budget. because long term, right? It's
Well,
going to only increase innovation.
I agree with it should be 51% if we're cutting everything else.
Agreed. I'm perfectly fine with that. Well, I don't understand the drive.
When I say everything else, I mean like the whole social programs. I'm talking about the big overall budget, the big overall pie, not just what's in that 51% of it.
Yep.
But so they are. So the reason why I say it could look kind of iffy is like what Jamie was saying there. A lot of the major advancements in technologies do come from military innovation.
Hey, your microwave came from the military.
I mean, 90% of all of our medical equipment and the way that we treat folks who are injured or wounded or sick came from military medical innovations.
Velcro came from military. Yeah. NASA.
Maintain came from it too.
Yeah.
So anyway, but when you look at it, if you're wanting to really implement this whole green agenda or this whole green energy agenda into what needs to be the most sustainable and energy independent organization or branch of the government, you don't want them having to rely on untested, unproven, and frankly, unnecessary energy requirements. I mean, you don't want to have a solar panel on the back of a jet fighter having to charge up under the sun for 18 hours before they can take off and fly on a mission.
My whole thing is this, right? Like while they're testing and perfecting those things, okay, they should be able to still spend and use the normal natural resources that we already have.
Well, I mean,
dump the jet fuel.
That's where a lot of the technological advances come into play here, is because of the defense contracts that are handed out to private organizations that develop all this, all these innovations.
If you rabbit hole, right? Because if you know me, then you know that I've talked about this a lot of times. There was a time frame, and there have been some people who have linked this to military operations, but I think this is a perfect example. Okay, there's been a lot of sonic bomb testing that used to go on, all right, in the ocean and this was supposed to be a new method of not having to use something as dangerous as a hydrogen bomb or any other form of a nuclear weapon. All right. They were testing this, whoever, right? Not saying it was the military, whoever was testing this in the ocean. The only reason anybody found out is because marine life was washing up on shore in large drones and no one knew what was going on. Okay. Catastrophic to ocean life. I'm gonna set that aside, right? So PETA don't come after me, right? I'm just sitting that aside for a second, right? This is what I'm talking about, though. This is how we stay on the cutting edge and making sure that our citizens are safe, is because when you find something like this that is not as detrimental to the environment or to the human race as a whole, you have to spend time testing it. You just can't go out there and implement it in the middle of a conflict. So to come back out of the hole, right? When we start looking at energy efficient ways to fight war.
So one step back from that, maybe you should go ask some of the people at Hiroshima and Nagasaki about that mindset.
I'm just look. All I'm saying is look.
Just saying.
So we'd have time to test.
Valid point. Right? Valid point.
We'd have time to really kind of proof test it. I'm just saying we have time to proof test sonic bombs before we go drop them on Russia or somebody.
Okay, Ukraine.
That's a low blow. That's dirty. All I'm saying though is that now, to your point, now's not the time to test out solar panel jets. You know what I mean? Or we had time to test out, remote controlled drones.
I'll put it this way. They can test out solar panel planes, just not in the military you give it out to those private contractors and let them develop it, build it, make it work,
point.
and then come back and give it to the mill and implement it.
My entire point, because again, I'm not 100% sure. I'm almost 100% positive that it wasn't directly the military that was testing the sonic bombs.
It never is. It's
Correct.
developed. And well, it's developed by private organizations, and then it is tested by the military. That's how.
That's the whole point of the contract.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying that when it comes to stuff like this, it is good that we have a large defense budget, is so long as it's focused in the right area. Having a diversity, inclusion, kumbaya czar, you know what I mean, and a curriculum. Like, they need to be learning how to make bombs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and how to defend the country.
They need to learn how to lead soldiers.
Correct.
That's what.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, not. How do you feel?
So so you're talking about a lot of the advancements and everything. So I was reading about an amendment that was introduced by Congressman Byron from down in Florida, and it was all about promoting the use of AI in the military and looking to advance quantum intelligence operations and things on that nature.
Now,
in the military.
Now,
I will say this, yes, because I have seen Terminator,
and I saw that Will Smith movie, I Robot.
That too. So that's one thing they need to keep in mind when you're implementing these types of things with guns. Who's on the other side of programming them? That
also, like, because again, if you know me personally, you know I'm really big in AI and innovation stuff like that, ChatGPT. That's one thing that has terrified a lot of people. Okay, it is so there is a functioning humanoid that is ran off of AI that is out of Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to say her name in case she's listening. But she is. I know she's plugged into the internet. She's very interested.
Excuse me.
She has been it has been classified as a human in the sovereign of Saudi Arabia. And for whatever reason, because of all the fears of AI, it has come out and actually has said that unless, you know, the program was actually implemented in some form or fashion, robot humanoids is what they're referring to themselves. Robot humanoids would not, or animatic humanoids, would not try to destroy human life. Okay. The fact that we have a living, breathing, not breathing, but we have a functioning thinking,
yes,
like
a computing,
has its own consciousness, AI bot that's running around trying to tell us that it's okay, me and my friends aren't going to hurt you, should be even more reason why we shouldn't create programs that allows them to go fight wars for us.
Because who's to say malware isn't developed to the level of where it can change itself, reprogram itself to then infect these electronic computing humanoid, whatever you want to call them, to where it then sends a virus to them to where it corrupts their systems and reprograms them with that mindset.
It wouldn't even have to go that far because we've already allowed one to have consciousness,
or even just a hacker.
That's
to
what
give them the program.
We've allowed one to have consciousness, right? And there's
there can only take one. There can only be one.
Correct, because since the beginning of time, right, there's always a duality, right? I always go back to Exodus. You know what I mean? When it says, and then God created lightness and darkness, right? There's always a duality. And at some point, whether we like it or not, if this one that exists right now is the good one, at some point there is going to be a duality one that only sees the negative of the AI program, which is the terrifying thing about the entire system. Yep. Because that's
iRobot all over itself right there.
Correct. So before we get too deep into that, we do not need to have AI program systems going out there and fighting wars for us.
No, not at all. So another thing that, another amendment that was introduced in this, and that it was, so the Pentagon, through the Department of Defense, has initiated a new policy that will pay for soldiers to travel over state lines if they are stationed in a state that does not allow for abortions. So they are allowing for, and they're paying for these soldiers to travel to another state to have an abortion and then come back and continue on in the in their jobs. And it's part of the combat readiness health training aspects of it. The this is going to be really interesting with this, but it's the CRT. It's the acronym is CRT, Combat Readiness Training.
Morally, I would agree with it, but I understand. Like that's.
But yeah, so there is a policy that taxpayers are paying for right now for soldiers to travel over state lines to have their kids killed in the womb. Yep.
I'm almost speechless. I am speechless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, one.
That was part of Biden's little executive orders that he put out when the Supreme Court came down with the modifying of Roe v. Wade and the states implementing their heartbeat bills.
Morally, I do not agree. I think that this goes back to the overarching problem to where we have created a culture that does not take responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So another one that they're looking at implementing, or that they're wanting to implement, is the reinstatement of soldiers who refuse to take the COVID-19 vaccine. I absolutely 100 unequivocally agree with this measure.
Yeah, like I don't understand why.
So the reason why, so the White House actually came out and very significantly opposed this one piece here, or this one provision within the NDAA. And the reason why they opposed it is because they said that, well, it was a lawful order that was given by their superior officers. The whole issue with the military is that you are required and honor and duty bound to serve and obey lawful orders that are given. So if you are refusing a lawful order, you do not deserve to be in the military. But so this is such a touchy subject to my heart with this one right here. So I'm going to read you directly from whitehouse.gov and exactly what the president put out in regard to this issue. And it says, provisions related to the COVID-19 vaccine. The administration opposes an exemption from the requirement to repay tuition at military service academies for those who refuse to receive a vaccine against COVID-19. Section 564 sets a dangerous precedent that not following lawful orders is an option for service members, which would be deleterious to good order and discipline as well as unit cohesion. This exemption would also have a negative budgetary impact. The administration similarly objects to Section 525, protections for members of certain armed forces who refuse to receive vaccines against COVID-19 for the same reason. Additionally, the proposed language would prevent the Secretary from taking appropriate action in the future should a new strain of COVID-19 be required vaccination for force health protection. Yes.
So basically, it goes back to if they tell you to take a drug, you have to, regardless of whatever it is, which is basically how LSD was founded.
A little bit of that, yeah.
So once again, I'm not even going there.
Yeah. So they're saying you were given a lawful order to take this experimental vaccine. You refused to do it. You were removed from the military under whichever discharge that you were given for it. You will not be considered for a recharacterization of the discharge because you refused a lawful order. And if you're refusing a lawful order, more likely than not, you're looking at a dishonorable discharge. Or at a very
Bare minimum.
Well, I say dishonorable discharge would be an extreme example of that. You're looking at least a less than honorable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, which impacts
Everything.
so much of your life.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because
Yes.
like you can't. You might as well not even join.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, I mean, not even have joined, but you would be better off having not joined.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, well, I got you there. Okay. Well, yes, you're right about that. And lastly, one of the other great amendments that was added to this, and that is in relation to the apparent 51st state that we have now.
This is what pisses me off about the entire thing. Okay. Because there are a lot of people fighting to stop the amount of spending that we are giving to Ukraine. And look, I'm all for fighting for democracy. You know what I mean? I believe in the NATO alliance. I believe in a lot of other things that we've done to secure the right to vote for a lot of for Americans and for the rest of the world. What's going on now, though, is a proxy war that's ridiculous. And for the fact that in our defense funding is funds from the U.S. taxpayer to go directly to Ukraine to fund their war with Russia is insane.
Yep.
That's it. Like, it's literally insane.
Yeah. So there was an amendment that was introduced that would have restrict any funding going forward to Ukraine as far as monetary, munitions, anything along that line. One of the big headlines right now is that the United States just sent cluster bombs to Ukraine.
Yep.
And for those of you who are not aware of what a cluster bomb is, if you've seen any sort of Vietnam War movie where you see these planes flying low over the treetops and canopies there, or better yet, an example, one of the B-52s flying over the Bombay George opening, a singular bomb drops out, and then you see just hundreds of explosions going on at once. That's a cluster bomb. It's a bomb that has hundreds of smaller bombs packed into it, so it carpets an entire area. Carpet bombing is essentially what it is.
It's the shot. It's the bomb version of shotguns.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like inside the little pellets that you would see inside of a shotgun are basically just other bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would drop that one bomb, and then instead of like
that's a great example, actually.
Yeah, I mean other shrapnel. It's not shrapnel, it's actually other bombs that are going across. And that was a good movie example of when you see that one bomb fall out of the sky, or the multiple, and you see little multiple explosions.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what's happening, because the rest of the internal bombs are hopping.
So the main compartment's not really a bomb. It opens up and disperses hundreds of these smaller bombs that go out. The thing about that is not all of those bombs go off right away. They go off when a child or a farmer is out tilling up the property or is out playing in their yard.
They can get buried
10 years later, and they step on it and it detonates them.
Yeah, because it could be buried like a landmine.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's delayed reaction at that point.
Yes. So
there's no dormant time because because of the material that's inside of them. It's basically like whenever the trigger hits.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I'll put it this way.
It's like pulling a pin in a grenade. The grenade can be active for a long time.
So the last time that we sold cluster munitions to another nation was to Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
97%. Well, after the Saudi Arabian war there, 97% of the fatalities that came from cluster munitions were civilians.
Yep.
And 2/3 of those civilians were children because they stepped on unexploded ordnances
inside
after
the desert.
The fact.
Yep.
So that's what these weapons are. And the three countries that are dealing with these are not part of the coalition, for good or bad. In all honesty, if we are in a war where America is in a war and is necessary that we use those, 100%. It's a nuke them to begin with. Just don't even worry about it. Just nuke it all. But
bombs.
there is a coalition of countries, I believe it's like 123 nations strong, that has made these sort of weapons illegal.
Yep.
For trade, for purchase, for any use, anything. Russia, Ukraine, and the United States are three nations that are not part of it. So we can legally give them to Ukraine.
Yep. This is another reason why I think the United Nations is a joke.
Oh, has it never been?
No, but I mean, this is another proof to it, right? Because when we start looking at this is a prime example, right? Of
World War Z told us that.
When we start looking at the things that we're all supposed to agree upon as nations, right? Some of the 193 countries that are recognized in the UN will agree to certain human rights aspects, but won't to others. We'll agree to use certain weapons, but not others. We will allow for, Syria, like Syria, when Syria came out and Assad was falling, right? And the use of chemical weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There was no method of punishing him for that, because of the fact that Assad did not agree to not use chemical weapons when the rest of the recognized nation signed on. So if I choose to be a part of the UN and I say, hey, I'm just not going to be a part of that committee, I want to be a part of this committee, I'm good to do whatever the hell I want, so long as I signed on.
Yeah.
That's BS.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, no, that's the deal with that. But a bigger aspect of that, and I think one that really would resound more here at home, is the fact that we're still sending money, we're still sending supplies, we're still sending aid, comfort, whatever you want to call it, to Ukraine, whereas our own veterans are still suffering here at home, but yet we're taking care of the veterans that are over there.
See,
we're paying to treat the veterans over there, but the veterans here are lying in the streets,
homeless,
on all sorts of drugs and everything, so they can cope with a lot of the illnesses and a lot of the injuries that they had received while defending the country.
Yeah.
Or at least while they were being told they were defending the country.
I think about the fact of, because out of all the things I look at on a daily basis, right? One of the things that I think it's awful is the fact of, we talk about tackling homelessness and a lot of these other aspects of, things that we don't like here at home. And the funding that we are sending overseas to take care of other citizens, if we had just used that here, we could have tackled affordable housing, because you're talking about a large population of the homeless being, veterans or being people who have had PTSD. You can build hero subdivisions, or things of that nature to house these people. And then do it in such a manner, like through land banks or things like that are economically feasible, to where people are going into these homes with equity built into it, that stabilizes a capitalist society, instead of trying to do the other democratic method, maybe that the Democrats try to push, and put people in governmental housing and keep the price low, right? You're putting people in homes that gives them a leg up, because they'll instantly have equity. And then once they go in there and stay through the extension of the capital gains tax, then they can go in and then have the financial security to go purchase another home and be able to put money in their pocket through the capital market, right? This is another reason why this whole idea, at some point, I feel Keynesian theory.
I'm still waiting on my initiation letter into that for y'all's county.
Just I'm not done yet. Wait till I'm done, though.
Throw that out there.
But this goes back to like this whole idea of why I hate Keynesian economic theory, because they're picking and choosing when this principle applies. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I mean by that is, under Keynesian theory, right? It's this idea that a sovereign country can print as much money as it wants, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea is that we don't have debt, and this deficit, and why it's not debt, is just the amount of money that we have extenuated out. Yeah. We're going right. So that's why they're like, oh, we can print 800.
Or better yet,
Yeah. This is why we can
bring back some favorites.
You know what I mean? Why we can print $886 billion that doesn't exist. And you know what I mean? And then send, you know what I mean, 100 billion of it to fight a war where we know we're not going to get any of that money back. And we've done this hundreds of times, which is what got us in here. Like, I'm definitely going to go in the rabbit hole, right? But this is why you have gold seals for the North African Territory War, where we just threw money at it. This is why you have so many issues with the dollar being the base of the IMF, is because we used the Land Lease Act after World War II to extend it out. You have purple seals and all these other different forms of currency that are printed just for these purposes. Yep. This is not what the American economy was designed to do. And that's the caveat, right? Is like, we're sitting here willing to go through these and create these programs for everyone but us. There's no reason why we can't create the same program and use the same funding source to fund American citizens being able to, if this, first off, if that's the theory you believe in, because I think that theory is bogus.
All right, buddy.
Anyway, I'm done.
Where's my hat?
I'm done. I'm getting ready to go to war.
Where's my hat? I need my tinfoil.
I will go off on a tangent about this because it's ridiculous.
Well,
it really is ridiculous.
Let's before we do that, let's take a moment to remind our viewers of Jamie's Law, and that they, as Jamie's Law clearly and very explicitly says, you must go in and like and share any of conservative soccer or any of Jamie's rantings and ravings that he does put out from time to time. And that it does say there 100% that you are required to do that under penalty of death. If you do not, you know what happens. You've been warned.
You've been warned.
It also says that you have to go and pay homage to Jamie at conservativetalk.org by hitting that sponsor tab and sponsoring his dictatorship to really come in and initiate his global takeover. So we do not have to worry about any of this anymore. We all will follow and obey Jamie Law. You were getting a little fired up there.
I am.
And I say that because I'm going to show you something that may get you fired up even more. So everybody just watch.
Republican governors across the country have been banning hormone therapy and puberty blockers for transgender people under 18 years old, though they're banning those procedures only as trans health procedures. They can still do them for other purposes, puberty blockers, et cetera. As governor of New Jersey, you signed into law some legal protections for trans people, including students. What do you make of your fellow Republican governors and candidates going in the opposite direction?
Jake, what I believe we should be focused on most importantly in these issues is making sure there is parental involvement at every step along the way. I don't think that the government should ever be stepping into the place of the parents in helping to move their children through a process where those children are confused or concerned about their gender. And I just would say that parents are the people who are best positioned to make these judgments.
So Christie supports chopping it off for kids.
Due to trademark infringement, I cannot say what I really want to say, but
you can because
I can now because I can do because I can't do the other one, right?
Yes.
But the chopping off is ridiculous, and the fact that this guy wants to run as a Republican for president and thinks that he can, sorry, Mom, kick Donald Trump's ass is ridiculous.
Yeah,
is ridiculous.
This man has become such a national embarrassment to the Republican Party that it pains me to actually say that he considers himself a Republican. I mean, because he's not. He's not at all.
Yeah,
he really isn't. He doesn't support any other principles.
He's a blue dog Democrat.
Not even that. I mean, he's just straight up Democrat.
You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean. Like how some Democrats used to be. They used to call them that when they were basically Democrats.
Yes.
They were conservatives but they only said that they were Democrats because they were in the South, right? He is the Republican version of that in the North.
So you know how they say Rhino Republican in name only? So it would be Dino. Democrat name only.
Well, we're talking about our answers for at the moment. We can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? But I mean, like, talk about a rhino, right?
I'm
like
coining that dino.
There are a lot of that word is thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
it's like racist.
Yeah, and it's like the conservative version of racist, right? They just use it when they don't like someone or like their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is not a conservative at all. Not even a little bit.
He doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what a conservative is.
Like, he is the definition of a rhino. When you start talking about someone who is a rhino, you should point to the things that Christie believes in.
Yes, because just because you don't agree with every aspect of what somebody falls under doesn't make them what a lot of folks are classifying as rhinos. That man, by every definition of what a rhino actually is a rhino.
100%.
He does not believe in any of the conservative principles. He does not live. He does not govern. He doesn't do anything by any of the conservative principles, which is what a rhino is. It's not somebody who has a different or not as extreme set of what conservative principles as somebody else has. That's not a rhino.
Yep.
It's
this man is not. I mean, like, the guy literally is saying, like,
we'll let parents decide whether or not to cut their kids' junk off.
Okay, if the parent's a psychotic Looney Tune,
which they are, if their kid is coming out and doing something like that.
Correct, because we've talked about this multiple times. If there is literally a child out there, like, and there have been perfect examples of kids whose parents were crazy and have gone, you know what I mean? Oh, well, you know what I mean? She likes sports, so let's make her a boy. That's not how that works. Or he likes ponies, so let's make him a girl. That's not what that means. That's just a kid.
99.9% of the time, it's the mother that does it. That just goes back to they wanted a child of the other gender and the other sex
from the beginning.
And they did not get what they wanted, so they are being the giant selfish pieces of that they are, and forcing that down their child's throat and ruining their lives forever.
Forget it. I'm just going to say it. It also reminds me of when people let their kids' hair get long. If they let the little boy's hair get long, give him a boy haircut.
Well, I mean, you don't find too many more manly men than Fabio.
Look, see, that's the problem. That's the problem. The moment that it became okay for a man to have a whatever they call it, a bun of any kind, is
Fabio doesn't wear a man bun.
Look.
His is all natural and flowing. Perfectly in the breeze.
If my dad was alive right now, he'd be mad at how long my hair is right now. You know what I'm saying? Like if you got cornrows, if you got a man bun, if you got beads in your head, if you're doing anything other than a fade or bald, you have a problem.
Well, yeah, somebody can run up to you, grab a hold of it, and cut your throat.
You got more problems than that. You know what I mean? There's little sugar in that tank.
Well, that's the reason behind the short hair. Is so nobody can run up behind you, grab your hair, pull your head back, and cut your throat. That's the entire reason for the short haircut.
Okay.
Well, historically, that's actually the reason.
I'll give you that one. That's not what my daddy told me. My daddy always told me, if you got a long hair, boy, you got a little sugar in your tank.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not what it hasn't evolved into. What I'm saying is that was the reason for it to begin with.
I just can't believe that. Back on topic, though, I just can't believe Christie is out here, you know what I mean, like trying to normalize inside of the conservative movement that, or trying to perverse the parental rights movement is more importantly that, you know what I mean, this is okay. And I'm a strong believer in parental rights. I'm a strong believer in like individualism from the sense of, like, you know what I mean, people have the right to believe what they want to as a nuclear family, to homeschool their kids, to find, you know, what education is best for them through the charter system program or the voucher program, or, you know what I mean, or any form of educational credit system. But the fact of the matter is that at some point in society, we have to draw a line.
And that line starts at, and I believe I know where you're going with this. That line begins where you're taking unmolded clay and molding it into something that it was never intended to be molded into.
Correct.
You are changing a child into something that you want them to be. You're changing them into the accessory that you want with you, so you can be seen as the higher echelon within your echo chamber that spews out the same bullcrap that you listen to in your own head.
Here's the core of the problem that I have with what Christie just presented and what the Democrats have been presenting for the last couple of years when it comes to this transgender thing. Okay, explain to me the difference between them and Marilyn Manson and Charles Manson, not Marilyn Manson, not the singer. Between Charles Manson and Jim Jones. Okay. Because basically what they're doing is they are trying to solidify and justify a subculture inside of society that will allow someone to come in and mutilate their bodies or someone else's body for the sole purpose of pushing an ideology. How is that any different from a cult?
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Correct. So when we start to see this transgender movement, and I've said this beforehand, the biggest lie that was first ever told, and it goes back to biblical scripture, was when someone convinced Adam and Eve, the serpent convinced Adam and Eve that God's image was wrong, that we were not created in God's image, that we were not born with the identity that God meant for us to be. And the moment we start perversing that, the moment that we stop being ourselves, how he created us, is the moment that we begin to continue to fall inside of society. So when you have when you have this cult ideology that has pushed this idea that you can become a dolphin if you wanted to, you can, you know what I mean? You
okay,
can,
Gerald.
Look, you can, I saw this.
You're talking nature versus nurture.
Yes. You know what I mean? When you can take your back fat and put it in your knees and make yourself taller, or you can do all this other kind of stuff. You can deform your body because you
have made a choice to be something other than what you really are.
And have chose not to be comfortable in your own skin. Hmm? You know what I mean? That's the problem.
No, you're not wrong. So, getting back to more pressing issues and matters, and that being your requirements and obligations in life, and following exactly what Jamie was just talking about, that is clearly laid out in Jamie law. And
our cult's better.
Yeah, it's not really a cult.
It's an order.
It's not just that. It's life.
I can't believe I'm buying into your.
It's garbage. Life. It's working slowly. But as Jamie Law does say, you are required to make sure you are hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content that we produce and release on any of the platforms that it is released on, as well as hitting that subscribe button. You are legally bound by blood to make sure that you do this. You are also required to make sure you're going to Jamie's website at conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab, because everybody knows Jamie expects and deserves a certain lifestyle, and he can't have it without you paying your tithes. We also want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So make sure you are looking for Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. We also want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First and their media arm, Vet Voice. So, Jamie, with that in mind, would you please, for the love of everything good, give us your final thoughts?
Let's see. The final thought of today is,
Did you get them all out earlier?
I did. You know what I mean? And I'll just wrap it up with this, right? This is why it's important to be involved, because, you know, we do this show to try to make sure that some of the things that we see that we think are important for people to make better decisions is put out there. And, you know, I mean, I can't imagine someone who I know who might have actually thought Christie might be a good candidate and then find
like
out
12 people in the United States.
Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying? And find out, like, you know what I mean? He's for transgender. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's
The
things like
mutilation
that,
of
right?
kids.
Right. So like, make
The
sure you
banning
go
of
out and do
firearms.
real research, right?
Yes.
Like, don't take just our word for it or any other person you see on YouTube or podcast, like,
Or a stump speech.
or stump speech from some random person who is not even a viable candidate. I'm not even going there, but of anything anyway. But my whole point is continue to dabble and make your own opinion by looking at multiple sources, because that's the true important, and that's the only way we can truly get to a society that means something again.
Yes, and the notion of being and getting involved and remaining involved is so critical. We've seen time and time again. We have these record turnouts when it comes to voting over the past at least the past 3 election cycles, or odd or even year election cycles. Yet none of them have broken 55% for the turnout rate of registered voters. How is it record breaking when only 55% of the registered voting population for a country turns out to vote? That in of itself is heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about our region alone. When the highest voter turnout in a county in our region was 53%.
Yeah.
And that's the historic high.
Put it this way, if Northwest Georgia had turned out 10% higher than what it did, we would not have 2 Democrat senators.
That's a very valid point. If Northwest Georgia had gone into the high 50s in every county, or even the mid 50s in every county, that alone would have changed. It's not, you can look, everyone has their own opinion about voting, right? You can be for paper ballots, you can be for machines, you could be for absentees, you could not be. You could be for any form of voting that you want to. But the reality is the fact that people didn't turn out.
Mm-hmm.
If people had turned out, we wouldn't have this.
Even in record turnout, they still didn't turn out.
And that's the crazy thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, just from the numbers I know that our county was in, the top 4 of the region in voter turnout. Number 1 was Catoosa with a record. And then when you start looking at some of the others, like the low was 49%. 49% of the registered voters.
Mm-hmm. What would shock you even more would be to know the percent of the voting population that turned out for primaries. 27% of the regular voting population for Northwest Georgia voted in the primaries.
So when you think about that, and you think about the fact of why did the Democrats win? It wasn't because of machine. It wasn't because of absentee stuffing. It's because you didn't go get your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you didn't force your neighbor to go vote. It's because you told your neighbor not to go vote, or you told him not to vote absentee, or you told him not to early vote, or you told him whatever other BS. The reality is that people didn't turn out. And if we can get people to turn out to vote, we can change the entire dynamic.
Just got a brand new idea for a new hashtag.
What?
Overwhelm the steal.
Love it. Let's close out here. I gotta go find my shoes.
As you just heard, that's the reason why you have to come and help support the channel, because Jamie needs shoes.
I gotta find them. I don't know where I left them.
But as we say with the end of every episode, this is Conservative Talk, and we will be seeing you soon.